I'm sorry for getting emotional, but this is a hard topic to talk about. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about finding the good in the midst of rejection. And yes, I do believe that there is goodness in the midst of something that is so painful as rejection, and I'm going to share that with you. And so whether you're going through rejection right now, that is like you didn't get the job you wanted, or you're dealing with a breakup or a divorce like I've gone through, or just maybe someone said something to you that felt like rejection because it was like crushing a dream or something that you were excited about and they like rejected that idea. You know, rejection isn't always a physical event happening, but sometimes it's even perceived rejection where that friend stops calling you and you think, what's wrong with me? And you feel rejected. So we're going to talk about dealing with that today. My first tip I want to share with you guys is the fact that rejection happens to everyone, no matter how successful you are, how much money you have, or how beautiful you are. We have to remember that this is something that everyone in the world has dealt with in some shape or form. And so you're not alone in this. In fact, I would love if you feel brave enough to share about a time you have dealt with rejection in your life, because I think that could encourage others to know that they're not alone. And I'm going to share about some instances that I have specifically dealt with rejection pretty soon here. So the second thing I want to share with you guys is the fact that in rejection, we should not use that as a reason to close ourselves off to people or new experiences. When we start that negative self-talk and we start thinking, what's wrong with me? Well, I don't want to try anymore because every time I feel like I try, people don't accept me, or every time I go after, this job or this new experience, I fail and I deal with rejection. We've got to stop that, because those thoughts and that decision to just say, I'm done, like I'm not going to try anymore, is going to perpetuate those feelings of rejection. And that doesn't mean that when you try again, you're not going to deal with rejection again in some way, shape, or form. I mean, like I said, that's a part of life. But it means that we are overcoming that negative self-talk. We are overcoming, and I'm going to talk about how we can overcome that negative self-talk, but we're pushing past those fears and those insecurities to try again. And recently, this hits home to me because I'm dealing with something when it comes to rejection. I was just talking to one of my best friends and I was telling her, like, I don't want to try online dating anymore because it's so hard how every time I will like somebody's profile, they don't respond to me. And I feel like those feelings of rejection weigh heavy on me because I've been through divorce. And so it's already this sensitive topic. And because I feel like online dating has been a failure, getting real honest with you guys here, every time I've tried it, just nothing happens. I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do that anymore. And so right now I'm just thinking about it because my friend said to me, she's like, well, you don't want to just, stop putting yourself out there. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. So I'm praying about, is it that I'm just afraid and that's why I don't want to keep doing online dating? Or is it because God just has something else for me? So I'm trying to be open to the Spirit's leading. If you have any thoughts about that, if you've dealt with that with online dating, please let me know, because it definitely hurts. And it's hard when you have to keep putting yourself out there on an online app. And I don't know, it's a weird world that we live in these days. So my third tip that I want to share is realize that God has a purpose for your rejection. Now, I know this can sound very strange to how you may be feeling right now if you're in the midst of rejection. It's like, how could God bring anything good out of this situation? And I mean, it's terrible. It's heartbreaking. It just hurts to our core to be rejected. But I have a few times in my life, well, multiple times, where I've gone through rejection, and now that I'm on the other side of it, I see how God worked, and I'm going to share a couple of those with you. My first experience was when I went to Christian school for a few years, and I was in a very small class, and I felt like I was experiencing rejection all the time. I didn't really have any friends. The kids in my class, we didn't mesh well. I was the kid that wanted to do the right thing no matter what. And I just didn't fit in with that class. I felt like the odd man out. And I remember coming home many times like crying to my parents. Like, it was a really hard time. This was in middle school, and middle school is hard. It was in 5th grade, 6th grade, and the beginning of 7th grade. But now looking back, and my parents have kind of confirmed this in me. They said, when you went through that time of going to school, you learned to stand up for what was right. And I also learned the ability to reach out to those that are kind of out of the group and try to include them. I'm sensitive to people that maybe need a friend and need to be loved because maybe they're a little unique, or maybe they're not being accepted by other people. So I'm really thankful that the Lord taught me that at a young age. Okay, so this other story I have to share with you guys because it's crazy, but it connects with this issue of rejection, and God's hand was so in this situation. So when I was trying to find a job as a newly single mom, before I started cleaning houses, I applied to work at Macy's in the Clinique department. And I really wanted this job because I love makeup, and I thought this would be the perfect fit. It would be a fun job. Well, I didn't get the job, and I don't know why for sure. I think maybe part of it was my availability. I wasn't available all the time. So I didn't get the job, and then I started cleaning houses. Well, later they called me back and were like, hey, we do want you for this job. Do you want it? Well, I had already started my cleaning business and was able to earn a pretty good amount of money with that, so I didn't think, I already had a job, so I couldn't change. So then this crazy thing happened. A few years later, there was a shooting at that mall, and guess where the shooting was? It was in the Macy's section, and I think it was in the makeup department, and someone actually died in that shooting. It was terrible, kind of a crazy thing to happen so close to home. And so I looked back on that situation, and even though I didn't get that job, and that was a form of rejection at that time, I mean, later they offered it to me, but not when I first initially wanted it. God's hand was in the midst of that. And I thought, man, what if I had taken that job and I was there when that shooting happened? So you just never know what God is doing in the midst of your situation. And you may not see it right now. You may not see it for a few years down the road, but God has a purpose for your rejection. So I hope that encourages you with where you're at right now. So my last and final tip is the most important tip and the most life-changing tip for dealing with rejection and finding the goodness in it. And that is to remind yourself of God's character and his faithfulness. This has been absolutely vital for me going through divorce, okay? Because divorce is one of those biggest forms of rejections I think that anybody could deal with. Just the way you feel about yourself afterwards, so many people just feel terrible about themselves. And so this has been so helpful to me, is reminding myself of God's faithfulness. We will deal with rejection in many forms, and so many people in our life will let us down at some point or another. Even people that love us and care for us, we may deal with them not understanding us or not always being there for us in the way that we would like them to be. And that's why we have to remind ourselves that God is the one that never changes. He always stays the same. It says in the Bible that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I want to read to you this passage that I was reading it and I was like, this is making me get a little bit emotional, but I'm going to share it with you guys here now. Okay, so here's the verse, and it says, greater love has no one than this. This is Jesus talking, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. And this is the most important part of this passage. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he gives to you. That verse that says, I'm getting emotional reading it, you did not choose me, but I chose you. So whatever rejection you're dealing with, remind yourself that God has chosen you. If you're a child of God, he has chosen you first and foremost. It also says in the Bible that, and while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We didn't have to do anything to earn his approval. We just had to accept his free gift of salvation. And God chose us to not to be a servant of him, but to be his friend, a friend of God. And I just get really emotional thinking about that, because in the midst of going through divorce, knowing that God chose me and that God will be faithful to me no matter what, that he will never let me down, I mean, that is huge for overcoming those feelings. I'm sorry for getting emotional, but this is a hard topic to talk about. But I just hope that today this is encouraging to you wherever you're at with rejection. And if you guys have any other advice of what you learned from the Lord going through a difficult time of rejection, then I would love for you to share it in the comments. And please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It helps my videos. I got a piece of hair right here. Thanks you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next week in my next video. Bye.